Hey everybody, how you guys doing? This is Alex with the Linux Tube, and today I've got a friend, a strong community support member. He's family to the Linux people. His name is Scott Guthrie, man, and we belong to a Facebook group called Linux BSD and Solutions group, right?
We've got Linux plus BSD unified communities and Linux plus BSD solutions.
That's right.
Community.
Solutions is the new group. That's right.
Yeah.
Anyhow, we both belong there. We're both pretty active in there. For some reason, the title always escapes me because the history on it is we've changed the name in that group like 3 times now and started another group. So it's kind of hard to keep up with, but it's growing. It's fast paced. It's a great plethora of knowledge. There's lots of veterans in there that you guys can go check out and ask questions from, and they're very nice veterans. They're not the kind that'll tell you to just Google it and get out of here, kid, kind of sort of veteran. So anyhow, it's a great place to be, man. So Scott, you and I, we've chatted offline for a little bit, for a while. First off, good thing that you guys are safe because you live in Florida. You survived it well. You got a little blow job going on there, but other than that, it's all done. You weren't in the path of the hurricane, so
not at all.
Thankful for that. Thankful for that. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
So, I mean, I live here in Florida, actually, just above Pensacola, and I moved here from Mississippi. So I was born and raised in Mississippi. Went there, did college at the Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College in Perkinston, learned about computer servicing, got a associate's degree there, and went on to open a computer store, and then later went offshore as an electronic technician, chief electronic technician. So
nice. So you covered a pretty well broad spectrum from electronics repair all the way to specializing in different forms of offshore, communications and stuff like that, right? Nice.
For sure,
nice.
for sure.
So how long have you been using Linux?
I opened my computer store in 2005 and was talking with a friend of mine. He was helping me use Knoppix at the time to get rid of viruses on Windows with a live CD. At the time, it was just CDs. And at some point, my Windows main computer for the office, things I used to do research on or get drivers or software or whatnot, it just blue screen to death and couldn't be recovered without a format reinstall. And my buddy goes, "Well, what's stopping you from installing Linux?" I'm like, nothing.
Just time.
And
just time.
I installed it full blown. I didn't do a side-by-side install or dual boot or anything like that. I grabbed a hold of Mandriva at the time, I believe, but that was from his previous experience of doing Mandrake and moving up through the ranks. And I never looked back. I wanted to learn everything I could. I flip-flopped, distro hopped all over the place and tried my best to actually break things so I could learn how to fix things. So there are people in the forums saying, can install GNOME and KDE side by side. One will cause problems with it. I would do it just to see why, to figure it out. And I mean, worst case scenario, I always had that parachute in my back pocket, that live distro, just pop it in and reinstall and let's blow and go again. Let's see where we get. So that's kind of where I went, how I went about it.
Just to say something real quick, I think that is the saving grace that a lot of people forget about when they install Linux. They get so frustrated and they break it and then they run back to Windows that they're like, no, I could just reinstall it real quick. I mean, because even the installation process for Linux is what, 5 to 10 minutes average on most distros?
most distros you
You
can
know?
be up and going pretty quick,
Yeah.
and
Whereas
some of
with
them
Windows,
now include almost everything you need. So I mean,
exactly. And
it's
With Windows, you spend a half hour just installing just so much bloat and stuff in it that by the time you're done actual with the install, you can't use it. You got to turn on and set it all up again with the welcome to Windows tour and all that other garbage that goes on, right? I don't know if you've done any of the
when
newer Windows, but that's how it is. So
oh for sure, for sure.
I think that is
When
the saving grace of Linux.
when I had the computer store, I actually it was from building the system, which took an hour,
Hmm.
getting Windows going, like you just said, maybe 30 minutes. But the whole entire process before I could actually hand off a new computer to a new user, for me at the time, took a 5 hour process.
Sure.
And that was because of getting all the little quirk things that if they wanted certain software packages, this, that, and the other, but just mainly install Windows, update all the drivers, do all the antivirus and spyware protection software, update those, and get it all to that point was on average, no doubt, 5 hour total process. Now, if I could get 3 machines on the bench and do them all simultaneously, more
Right.
power to me. I had a KVM at the time and I could switch back and forth. I'd get 3 of them going and turn around and go back to looking stuff up on mine and playing around with different distros and
Right.
switch back and forth and look and do. But I mean, yeah, it was definitely that kind of process. And the mentor that I had for Linux, he would say he did the process of doing the dual boot, and he said he would find himself in Windows, got frustrated, flipped over to Linux, and then anytime he stumbled, he just flipped back. And
Right.
eventually he never had to flip back. He learned enough in Linux to where he could pretty much do everything. And now he's exclusively Linux. He works a job that way as well. But he was saying, and he's the one I attribute with this kind of quote, but he just says, with Windows, I was constantly working on my PC. And with Linux, I get work done with my PC.
Right. Right.
So,
So that pretty much, so I think you just answered my second question, which was what got you into Linux. So
yeah,
it was a frustration of the Windows world, which is nothing new to anybody. I mean, for me, like I've been using Linux for 20 plus years. I went way back when, like I remember when Ubuntu came about, you know what I mean?
yeah.
And so, I mean, back then, I was frustrated with Windows because it's like they always wanted me to nickel and dime me to death with hardware and licensing all together for buying a new version of Windows and this, that, and another, right? When they were coming out. So I got frustrated, and that's how I found Fedora to begin with, when it was in its first inceptions as well. So, I mean, Linux has always been less hassle. It's just that it wasn't as eye appealing in my mind's eye to most people to make them want to jump. And of course, way back then, the lack of software support. Like
The software support in particular, but more so, even the hardware compatibility in those days was very limited.
very
You
limited,
had like
exactly.
3 network cards you could use. You had and I could see from a broad picture, a massive scale. Whenever you look at the comparisons and you go, okay, Windows, Linux, okay, back in those days, you got all these big companies and they're going to just install these computers, and you don't want some system admin spending extra money on parts because they have to be specific hardware
Right.
and the time and the this
Yeah,
and the that.
it
But
just wasn't ready for deployability across a company or even a network at that time, to use as a desktop environment. Now, servers have always been around.
not in the comparison if you go of the ease of use of just all right, well, this comes pre-installed Windows and we didn't have to do anything super special. Yeah, they set up their Active Directory, they do this, they do that, and I can see from that aspect of why Windows and even Mac is so much more popular because of that little change Now, nowadays,
It's totally different.
you
It
can
is
go and
different.
buy a Linux system pre-configured.
Yep.
So that's not the argument. But at the same time, you've got the mass of people who are all using Windows for so long. It's what I'm used to. It's what I know. That Linux thing, it's for
However,
those real advanced techie types, and those stigmatisms carried over with us now. But a lot of people are seeing the
that's where I
other
think
side of it.
that's where I think the inception. That's where I think Cinnamon desktop environment plays a huge factor in the fact of the ability to change from Windows world to Linux world as far as navigation and usability and familiarity comes across. Now, where a little bit more work needs to be put into by the new to Linux user is researching the apps that you may use in Windows that are not the same or cross-platform in Linux. Like GIMP for open or for Photoshop, right?
Right.
GIMP is pretty comparable, you know what I'm saying? Or LibreOffice for Microsoft Office, they just don't know these things. And that's where I think, we tend to have an issue nowadays with, but I think more and more people are so much more frustrated with the Windows 11 TPM thing, and different things and the constraints that Windows keeps putting on and adding and seemingly doubling down on, that maybe they're taking the time to learn, or they've heard other people who've already made the switch talking about it, and they're like, oh yeah, so they're willing to put the effort in, because I see new users coming all the time.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And there was an actual website for a while called Linux Counter, and I was on that group and part of it. And at the time, it had some kind of crazy 20 million number or whatever. I can't remember.
Right.
You'd have to use the Wayback Machine to figure it out. But I mean, I put other stats like this on our group as far as the users are. It's hard to count this number because there's so many people using it that you wouldn't know. But and talking on the point that you were just saying, as far as it's one of those things where it's a big difference if you've got a 50-year-old person who's been using Windows 30 years, and now you're trying to convert them. But at the same time, I see it like this. Okay, so they went through the paces of going from XP to 7 to 10 to 11 to this, and having to learn all that stuff over again. But at the same time, they had to pay each time for a new license and pay for all this extra software and anything you want to add. And then you turn around, you look at the Linux side and you go, okay, well, everything's free.
Well, everything's free, and you could, and it's so lightweight and non-resource intensive. You can put it on old stuff, old stuff you got kicking around, and it'll run better than it ever did with Windows.
Yeah. There are some little differences with Windows and Linux in that respect that actually help a lot. Not having a defrag, that side of the maintenance on Windows, remembering all those different things you had to do, the updates and clutter, and just my teenage kid got on here and went looking for some extras for Facebook, and now the system's got all kinds of spyware and different things on it. We slowed everything down.
I remember those.
They didn't know what they were doing, and that's fine and dandy, but you can't even do that on Linux. As far as that goes, you'd have to try really, really hard to actually get to the point where you've slowed the machine down, just because it goes, nah, we don't think so. So.
Right. Well, Windows is what it is. Linux is better in every aspect, and more users are finding it, and I'm excited for that, because a lot of devs, a lot of people behind the scenes, but just through feedback, and hanging out in these forums and groups and chats and stuff, have helped develop it what it is. It's a lot of thankless hours in there. So my next question to you is, what would be your single most important advice that you can give a new to Linux user?
So for sure, if you can actually get a mentor somebody who's right there with you, you know, even if it's long distance over remote, doing this, doing that, it is probably the best way. And they might give you their own personal opinions and try to steer you into what they know just because it's easy for them, and that's fine. But at the same time, even if you don't have that, the resources out there for Linux in particular, the people talk about, oh, well, this distro is no different than that distro except for packet manager or this or that, and small little visual things. But at the same time, a lot of people discount and overlook the community side. You know, you've got a massive community with Ubuntu, you've got a massive community and a following with Fedora and some of these others, and their forum pages and resources are there that have gobs and gobs more information than you'll ever find in the Windows world, for sure. But I mean, as far as you doing self-help and actually fixing things on your own is so much easier from the Linux side, but you have to have that I want to fix it attitude. Now, if you're not that person, you know, there are Linuxes out there that you could just use. And going back to the point a minute ago, whenever I was sitting there telling you, you know, you've got a 50-year-old. Well, at the same token, if you've got a 16-year-old who's never used Windows at all and hand them Linux, they don't know any different. It's even better.
Yeah.
You know, they had to learn something anyway. Might as well learn this free one and keep going.
Exactly. I think that's really pretty good advice, man. And the fact, like you've said before, you're not alone. There's always, you know, lots of community. And that's a good thing about Linux too. There's lots of community. You've got, you know, us YouTubers out there. You got me, you got Derek Taylor, which is DistroTube. You've got Matt over at the Linux Cast. You've got Tech Hut, Brandon, you know, Garner Bryant. I mean, there's lots of us out there, you know what I'm saying? So
our 2 Facebook groups, I mean, again, it's one of those things,
our 2
shameless
Facebook
plug,
groups,
I don't care. Y'all come over, we're here to help.
People gravitating to those groups just to get knowledge, man, which is kind of cool.
Sure.
We have lots of, you know, lots of good vets in there, you know, like Detour, Midgard, you know, those guys are 2 Gentoo specialists, you know. I mean, we've got lots of good stuff going on in there, man. Lots of good people in those groups. So that leads me to ask you to the next question, which is, what is your best experience with Linux?
My best experience with Linux is actually having that resource of all the forums, the groups, the people that are actually a lot. There are people, like you said.
I have to put a pin in the cap on that one too, because I say that's my favorite one too.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, you do, like you said earlier, you get those people, oh, go read the manual or go do the, but that's not the majority. The majority of the people actually honestly want to help people come across, and people get exactly out of the slavery of having to pay for everything that they use. You know, again, it's one of those things where we, especially in the group, if I've got anything to say with it, I mean, it's one of those, hey, we're going to help these people along. I know Charles, you, the other admins in our group, we're all behind helping. And if somebody needs extra care with that or extra time or, you know, whatever, we're here for it. You get those people that are just like, hey, go read the manual, go do some Googling, do this, do that. That's not us. And there are people on our group that might be that way, but be sure that we have your back. And there are going to be repercussions one way or the other. We'll be telling those people, hey,
oh yeah,
you know, it's cool, you're trying to help
if
your
I catch
way.
anybody in there doing that, I'm bouncing them right off the bat. No questions asked. That is not an acceptable answer in our community.
I don't necessarily bounce, but I mean, you know, again, it'd be one of those things I can tell them, hey, look.
I'm sorry. I just don't, for that, that's not a good attitude. I don't want that attitude.
I've seen it today, actually. I was trying to help in the chat room with Mike, and he was doing some Gentoo stuff, and somebody was just asking off the wall questions and trying to steer Mike off of what he was troubleshooting. And I just told him, hey, you know, if your intent's to make fun, I'm not in the mood.
Right.
If your intent was something else, I apologize for misunderstanding, but at the moment, I'm trying to fix a problem. We're going to go in this direction. If you can just refrain from making any comments or jokes, I would greatly appreciate it. So I gave him the chance. It was just one of those, because I don't know for sure. you
Well, you're
know,
a much
it is
better
what it
man than
is.
me because I'd have been like, I'm sorry. I'd have gave him feedback and said, why? Come back in 10 more days. You know what I'm saying? I'd have
I
given
mean,
him a good
it
timeout.
is what it is. I mean, you know,
But
people sometimes don't really understand what's going on
and they don't
whenever you're
know,
doing a
and the
help
thing
system.
is they don't understand the damage that it does to our community as a
Yeah,
whole. I mean, that's the one thing I've heard from so many people. The minute I mention Linux, that people have any type of technical subject, it's like, oh, you guys are elitist. You guys think you guys are this, that, and another. I would have tried Linux a long time ago, but this, that, it insanes me to hear that because it was some jerk out there that drove a pretty decent guy away. And this could have been some guy who's developed the next, major program that's being used by NASA that got driven away because of this foolery. So I mean,
I
it drives me mad. It doesn't need.
going back to it. I mean, as far as that goes, you do actually have users right now that, I mean, they want to surf the web and check their email, and that's like the extent of everything they do on the computer. And
Right.
Linux can do that all day long,
All
every
day
day,
long, every
with
day on
no
any damn
problem
distro.
whatsoever. You're never
Right.
tinkering, you're never messing with it, you're never
Yeah.
having to fix things. Yeah, okay, even if you don't update
Yeah.
it will still browse the web and check email. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, it will still do those things quite well, happily forever.
Yep. Absolutely.
So,
So I mean, but anyhow, Linux is very good, and the positivity towards it is changing over time, and I'm happy to hear that the community is growing every day. The community is growing stronger. They don't there are a lot of us that are not tolerating that, and we're taking a stance against it, and it's getting less and less and less, which is a
for
good
sure.
thing. And this channel is about that. I want to promote positivity. Yes, there are some distros out there that have some issues. I've done reviews on that I would just not want to put onto a new user. So, I've been positive. And there's one that I did a couple months ago that really, when I was editing the video, it it really came across as 20 minutes of not happiness with it. So I shelved it. I didn't even put it out there, you
I
know,
mean, yeah, I
because I
get that.
mean, there are some distros out there that are buggy like that. But that's why so many of us do distro reviews, like Tori Holt over at eBuzz Central. That's his thing. He does tons and tons of reviews. So, I mean, you could check those out and see which Linux distros look good or whatever. I do them as well, you know. But either way, it's growing more and more positive, and that's a good thing. So now that leads me to the next question because we've all had them. What is your worst experience with Linux?
My
I know you have
worst
to pause for a minute because
experience.
there's not really that much.
I mean, I'm not really one of these people that just give up.
Right.
So I always strive to go, okay, I'm going to overcome this. I'm going to do that. But I mean, you know, in saying that, it's one of those things where, you know, you get a distro, it's new, it's shiny, it's this, and you go and install it, and then you find out, oh, well, I want to try to do this, or I want to try to do that, and then you don't get the support you need. Right there is a red flag for me. If I can't find the resources or the help, and it's not been recently, I can't remember the last time this happened, but I have found a distro or two where I'll just like put it in, something massively happened to go way wrong, either with the hardware I had at the time
Right.
or this or that. And it was just one of those, okay, well, scratch that idea. We'll go back to the drawing board, get
Right.
another one and breeze on. So, I mean, there have been times in the past where hardware was a compatibility issue, or the specific distro didn't actually support all the things I needed it to, and that would leave a bad taste in my mouth, but only for about 5 minutes.
Right.
So, you
So
know,
for me, in making my switch to Linux from Windows World, all those years ago, and still continually, the one thing that I could see for new people making their switch from Windows World to Linux World is the confusion on installing applications as far as the repositories are concerned. And it's because each distro, seemingly outside of ones that are based off of a parent distro, like Ubuntu and, well, actually not even Ubuntu anymore, but like Debian based ones like MX Linux, they use the Debian repositories, right? So that's similar
Yeah.
across the board. But yet Ubuntu, who came off of Debian, has its own his own repository system, and then when you switch to Arch, it's different, how to use that one, for the Arch repositories, and it's different for Gentoo. They have the emerge package system,
Yeah.
I mean, they're all different. It would be nice if there was one centralized repository system that everybody used. That way you
It
don't
would,
have to
it
learn that.
would, and it wouldn't. The only thing I see when you get deep under the hood there would be that, okay, so because this package depends on that package, and this one was written for this system in that way, and that one was written for this system in that way, you could break things, and you'd have a lot more headaches this
Yeah,
way or that way.
yeah, that can be, but I'm saying for like general packages, general, ones that are always used, not system core packages,
Hey, no. Even just like you brought up GIMP a minute ago,
right.
there could be some version of Linux on a distro that's bleeding edge, that
Mhm.
has the latest and greatest version of GIMP out right now. And for somebody else who's wanting the stability issue, and that's kind of two sides that
To the
not
dragon,
all, mind you, not all encompassing, but two
right.
major sides is bleeding edge versus stable.
Right, and
And
that's where I think the choice of which distribution type of uh, Linux kernel that you want on that, being like, do you want the hardened package or do you want the bleeding edge? But they should offer that, because if you do the hardening, it's just one major repository, right? Whereas if you
yeah,
do the other one, then it could be their bleeding edge repository only that's in there, which is different. I mean, I believe there's a way of working it, but it's a lot of work. It really is a lot of work.
that it'd be a big, massive chore. Now,
Yeah.
at the same time, like in Gentoo, I can pick and choose. I'm starting to use it again. I've used it before.
Right.
You just mentioned it a while ago. But I remember, and I know that you can actually really customize the system. So I can have a core base of like everything stable,
Right.
but be bleeding edge on my web browser.
Right. And and some
So,
people will say, to my point, some people will say, well, that's what snap packages and flat packs are for. You can do it that way too. I mean, there is, like you said, there's more than one way to skin a cat, and it's true. I mean,
yeah.
and I actually think that flat packs is the way that it's going to be moving to. It's a lot less maintenance. Everything's already core packaged in there. It's containerized, and it's just a matter. But the only problem is having an adequate launcher, because with Flatpak, you type in Flatpak run and then the name of the Flatpak, and it runs it in a command line. There is a way that you can do putting in a command line, command that will actually create a symlink and create a .desktop file for it, and then you can launch it through like your app launchers like dmenu and that kind of stuff. So I mean, there is a way around it, but it's those extra steps, whereas if they could make it to where it automatically does that when it does the install, runs that little command line to make the symlink, it'll work a little bit better. I mean, so they're still fine tuning that, but I think in the end, eventually, I think that's where the future of our applications is going to go to. So in a way, it's all going to become a centralized repository, for those of them that want the easier way to do it. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, at the same time, you put all your eggs in one basket, the basket breaks, everything.
I'm not saying it's going to be the only way. I'm just saying it's going to be the major way. And then you're still going to be able to do stuff from the command line through the standalone, DNF or, app package manager or whatever. So I mean, it's so nice to speculate, because with Linux, that's what you can, because we have such constantly new things being developed all the time. You never know what direction is going to go, and then when you think it's going one direction, it'll just hook left and go to a different direction, which is different, which is cool. I mean, that's what I love about Linux. The customization and customability of Linux is amazing, bar none the best.
Oh yeah. I mean, again, there's some people that actually, love the challenge and accept the change, and some people that are I don't want nothing to change. It needs to be. I mean, I personally know of a 75-year-old woman still using a computer, and 7's the absolute best. I won't change. I don't want to go to anything else. This is what I use. This is what
I
I'm
kind of
going
gotta
to
agree
use.
with her. I kind of gotta agree with her on that too. 7.1 is about the best version of Windows ever, but still not for me. Well, listen, man, we're gonna have to start wrapping this up pretty quick here. So,
Yeah.
question for you, man. One last question, and it's kind of just like an open forum now. Uh, you, you got anything you want to tell people? You know, any message you want to give them towards anything?
I for sure, for sure, keep an open mind and like try something new. Come
Hmm.
over to our groups, check out Alex's YouTube channel, see what it's all about. Come over, get away from the slavery that is, corporate
Corporate
software and having to
software
pay for
America.
everything,
Yep,
as far as that goes. Because hey, the water's nice over here,
it's
as far as
beautiful.
that. Yeah.
It is. You know, I'm really glad that I met you. You have a friend in me for sure, brother. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And you're very knowledgeable. In fact, I refer to you as a librarian because you're the only person I've met outside of one other guy whose name is TJ. He's like 70-year-old living in Florida, by the way. He has another spinoff of another group, Facebook group out there called TJ's Linux Community. You should check that one out if you get a chance to. Uh,
Okay.
awesome guy. He's an OBS. He's a former chief from the Navy, so he's kind of like me in that rough and gruff kind of attitude, you know. And so, but anyhow, like you and him are both two of the most quickly to respond and be able to pull up a document or an ebook or something somewhere that can give you good advice, man. You guys are like the librarians. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of cool that we have somebody like you on speed dial, so to speak. You know, I mean, it's good work that you do. I see you taking a lot of time in the group, taking time up, talking to new people, and vets, man. I appreciate what you do for the group, and I appreciate what you do for the community.
I mean, that's 100% the only reason I'm even in the group is I have a very strong need to want to help. So if somebody's got a problem, that's exactly where I excel. And I want to go and find the information as quickly as I can, get it back to them and see. And I might not always get it on the first, even the second round, but I keep edging more and more closer to the answer fairly quickly. There's several times where, yeah, like you said, you told me, I think one time before, you were actually looking up the problem and I'd done blasted 5 links, as
Yeah,
far
you
as that
did.
goes. So, I mean, it happens. It is
Yeah, I
what it
mean,
is.
it's fantastic. I mean, it really is. I mean, and I'll be honest with you, I've been in several different chat groups and several different forums and several different places across the community, and this is the only community where I found people like you to be sitting in there, other than TJ, the TJ's community as well. You two are on the same level there,
Yeah.
where you could ask a question if you're on and you will have an answer within a minute to 2 minutes. It's the fastest responses and legitimate responses I've ever found. So I mean, that's something to be proud of. I mean, that's something
It's
to
a
be proud
credit.
of.
I mean, again, it's a lot of time spent. It's been years and years and years of me just trying, okay, I need to fix this, as far as that goes. And then some of the conditioning I got offshore, that particular world, things go down. It's 21,000 an hour that they're losing.
Yeah,
They're
and
not
that's a lot of
earning,
money. You got to
however
come
you
up
want
with
to
an
look at
answer
that.
real damn quick.
Yeah, fix it, fix it
Yep.
now.
Yep.
So I mean,
You mean you didn't
that
fix it
that
yesterday? What's
mentality,
wrong
that
with you?
mindset, that's always been. It's like, okay, we got to get in here and fix it.
Right.
So
No, anyhow, it's good. It's great chatting with you, my brother. Look forward to our next chat. I'm going to definitely bring you on the channel a couple more, well, not a couple more times, but a bunch more times, as
yeah,
many
it's
times
cool.
as you'll have me for
No
different
problem.
things, maybe comment on different projects, different things you found, that kind of stuff. So you be safe down there and you take care of yourself and your queen, you know,
That's
and
it.
you guys stay good, stay strong, and you just keep on Linuxing. All right.
Thank you. You too.